I'm going to start off by saying that I don't have a lot of experience with slicers. I know that there are so many different settings that you can change. I tend to use the defaults for the different quality settings. So you have standard, you have fine, super fine, and whatnot. But I chose 3 different slicers to use the default settings and to compare the different outputs of the models. Up front here, a couple of the failures I had early on with the CR6. On the left, you have the cat model. It just kept giving me a filament run out error. It kept, stopping every I don't know, 50 layers or so. And you can see here, if you wait, see if I can get a good, there we go. Okay, so you can see that there's a brown line. What would happen is that as the filament ran out, and the longer you waited, the more heated the filament would get in the hot end. And so when you restarted the print after a certain amount of time, all that burnt filament would feed through and causes that really horrible brown line. So I can't imagine that you would want to wait too long for doing the filament run out restart, because it does cause those burnt brown lines. And so I gave up on this model for a time being. And this one here on the SD card is called Shoe. And looking at the model in the slicer, it looks nothing like a shoe. I have no idea where that name came from. But again, you can see those really horrific brown lines where this filament would sit in the hot end until you restarted the print, or resumed the print, I should say. And so you got to be careful if you do have a run out issue to start it right away, or else you're going to get those brown lines, especially if you don't plan on finishing the model in any way. If you're going to keep it as is, be aware of that. To me, it's very detracting from the model, especially if you don't plan on painting it or sanding it or anything like that. And so back here I have the 3 different slicers I used, and the model that I used was the mini torture test, where it does overhangs and spaces and whatnot. Again, I'm not too familiar with slicer settings, so these are all default. So I would install the slicer, and then I would select the appropriate profile. The only thing I had to change with these was the fact that I would choose Ender 3 Pro, and then I would have to change the bed size, and that's all I changed. All the defaults are still there. So with Cura 471 out of the box, it was 204 minutes using the Ender 3 Pro profile with just the bed change. And from what I can tell, wow, it does not want to focus. It's like any other test. It was not bad at all. There's a couple of different gaps or little spaces that you can see shouldn't be there. But overall, it came out really good. And this was 204 minutes of printing. And that's, for a little test like this, that's a long time. I think the fastest I've ever seen it is in maybe like 30 minutes or less, depending on your settings. The overhang, which again, I'm sorry for the focus, but the overhang starts to get bad at about 60 degrees. So you can see, let's see if I can, maybe it's the background. So you can see that there is some drooping and whatnot. It still fuses together, but you can definitely see the drooping. And then here's the other one that goes a little bit higher. So there's a definitive not sticking. So you can see it starts to split at the lower one there. And if I flip it over, you got 80, 70, and then of course 60 is where it's sort of the worst it would get, or I should say the best it would get before it starts to get worse. 50 is ideal. 50 is the one right here. There's no issues whatsoever. The stringing is minimal. Again, I know that you can tweak the settings within the slicer to get those fixed. So that's something I'm gonna have to do some research on. And you can see that there's some spacing back there where the filament didn't quite stick together, or it wasn't quite where it was supposed to be. And I measured the tolerances, and they seem pretty good as far as length and width and and whatnot. So that's the Cura 471, and then we have Simplify 3D, which I really like the interface, but I just can't get over the fact on how long it takes with the default settings. It's 285 minutes, but it is spectacular. I mean, it other than the overhangs, everything looks really good. It's not horrible looking. There's not a lot of, you can see here that there's no spaces like there was in Cura. So it's a lot better. But again, it's just the time frame that it takes. And you can see here, that top one there is 75. So you can see 60, looks really good. And then below that, you got 45, 30, and 15. Same thing on the other side where 80 is just splitting apart because there's no support. But then as you get lower in degrees, it looks a lot better. So 70 and 60. So it can handle, I would say, comfortably 65 degrees. Beyond that, you would probably want to put supports depending on how detailed you want your model to be. And you can see that there's no apparent stringing or anything like that between the posts. Again, there's no spaces that shouldn't be there. Those spaces are supposed to be there for the tolerance test. There's a little bit there on the flat part, but there's not anything horrible. Again, great quality, but the time frame just took way too long. And then we have PrusaSlicer, which a lot of people have been saying is really good for the CR6. I don't like it because the default settings, and I wasn't aware of this until after I printed it, the default settings for PrusaSlicer are 0.3 millimeter layer height, and that's choosing the other option for printers, because of course it only shows the Prusa printers, but you can choose an option called other, and it has Ender 3, and that's the one that I chose. And it has a 0.3 millimeter layer height, which is why it came out so not so good. It stopped at 99%, and you can see that this is where it stopped. So I think it was just an issue with the G-code or whatnot. You can see that it stopped right there, pretty much at the end of the print, and wouldn't finish all the way. But you can see that the layer height is definitely different, and so for that reason, I won't use PrusaSlicer until I can figure out how to change the settings, because it's not good at all. I mean, the overhangs, you can see here, the overhangs are just not good, even at the lower degrees. You got a lot of globbing and stringing there. So for those people who like PrusaSlicer, I'm not saying it's bad. It's just it's my fault because I don't know how to change the settings of the slicer. So I'll have to figure that out. But to start off with, I like Cura because of the fact that it's good quality and it doesn't take a lot of time. So I'll probably stick with that for now. Another thing that's not here, which is part of what I wanted to talk about with the White House model, is this was printed using the included Creality slicer. And I forgot how long this took, but it was over a day. And that's because Creality sets their slicer settings in their included profile to be super fine, immaculate, takes forever, but looks awesome settings. I can't get over how well this looks. It's just the time it took to print was so long. And I have the intention of printing the different government buildings. So there's the White House, there's the Capitol building, and then there's the Supreme Court, or the Judicial building, I forget what it's called. So I would say that if you want best quality, but you don't care about how long it takes, definitely choose the Creality slicer that's included with it. It printed perfectly. The first layer was awesome. That's only bed artifacts that you can see there in the reflection. That's probably my fingerprint on the bed, but otherwise it just came out awesome. Even with different filament types. Here's my Flexi Shark that was in a purple color I did. You can see that to me the first layer was awesome. It came out, there were no issues with it. It broke apart the way that it was supposed to. It's just, in my opinion, one of the better profiles for slicers. So I would definitely use that if you don't care about how long it takes. If you are worried about time, I would choose another slicer and change the settings. Definitely go through. I'm going to try to learn more from Teaching Tech. Hopefully I can get some information about slicer settings. I know Maker's Muse, Angus from there. He does a lot of slicer settings, so I'm going to try to learn more about that. So hopefully we can get it going from there. Stay tuned. Hopefully I have a lot more coming. I appreciate all the subscribers. I know there's not very many, but I do appreciate everyone watching my channel. It's just something that I wanted to put together, and I'm not worried about making money or anything like that. I just feel like it's time for me to put my knowledge out there so that hopefully someone can use it. All right, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and share, and we'll see you in the next video.